This is Find Your Flow, a show about navigating the complexities of life and business through the lens of curiosity. I'm your host, Angelique, and I bring together experts to deliver responsibly curated conversations and perspectives that aim to progress people and the planet. If you've been following along, you'll know that building better brands through social impact is a common theme as it relates to a happier, more aligned world. But how can we encourage more brands to adopt? Businesses can make a positive impact on society and environment by incorporating social impact initiatives into their operations. So from adopting sustainable practices, supporting local communities, empowering employees, and through diversity and inclusion initiatives. Integrating social impact initiatives into operations can create long-term value for stakeholders, including its people and its customers. So our guest today is on a mission to do just that, starting with storytelling. So Krish Patel is the founder of the social enterprise Tales to Inspire, a not-for-profit organization that shares people's stories across the world to encourage people to never give up. So since its founding in 2019, Tales to Inspire has grown to now be able to deliver workshops for children in schools and inspirational sessions within the workplace. So their stories have been read in over 107 countries around the globe and listened to in 75 different countries. So his projects of building a schoolhouse in Uganda after running across England and supporting homeless people in Manchester to go from the streets into employment are aligned with his aim to make a positive impact in this world. So that's a pretty impressive background there. And if I remember from our first conversation, you had also started out as a professional soccer player and then you had this inspirational journey to where you are today. So tell us more about, how you made that transition and what that journey looked like for you.
It's so strange, right, Angelique, that you just read all of those things out and talked about all of those things about me. If you told me that 10 years ago, I would have said, no chance, that's a completely different human being, right? Because my values were different. My values were completely different. And I think that we put ourselves into a box where this is who I am and this is who I am going to be for the rest of my life. Now, actually, this is who I am today. Tomorrow, I could be completely different, and I'm open to that. And that's so huge. So yeah, soccer, I was a professional soccer player. My life was, what we call it, football here in England. So football was parties, was work hard, play hard, all in or nothing. And that was my whole life. I was going to play in the Premier League and I was going to live my whole life here, get a big house, and all of that, prove my family proud. And it didn't really go that way. I then went and played in the US until 2018. I was in California, Nevada, and then I was in Alabama and ended up in Florida, in Orlando, and then came back to the UK, and my whole life had changed from a boy who cared about materialistic things to a seemingly so adult who actually wanted to make a difference in this world,
Absolutely. That's amazing. So when it comes to, and I actually want to mention too, something that I love that you had mentioned at the beginning was, you can change every day. Who you are today is going to be different from who you are tomorrow. And I feel like sometimes on this path to purpose, we get attached to this one thing. Like, how do we figure out the one thing that we're supposed to be in this life? And what that may be, you have the pinnacle, the North Star that guides you, but then you can change and you can be so many different versions of yourself on the way to that space. So, I love that you had mentioned that. And, I guess I'd love to hear, like, what was your founder story of Tales to Inspire? Like, how did you get started? And building schools in Uganda. This is incredible.
Yeah. So Tales to Inspire was built out of frustration, really, because 2016, I ran across the UK, 4 marathons in 4 days from the northwest to the northeast of England, and went over to Uganda, started volunteering, and ended up building a schoolhouse with all the money that was raised to educate 150 children. And then 2019, I swam 53 miles, all the lakes in the biggest national park in England, which is the Lake District, to help 36 homeless people go from the streets and back to their feet. But I was working a job at this time. I'd stopped playing soccer. I was working a job that I didn't particularly enjoy. All I wanted to do was help people. That was it. When I spoke to my family and my friends, they would often say, get a job that earns as much money as possible. get the big house, have the family. But I'd already tried to live that life, and that wasn't happiness for me. So now I knew what I wanted to do was to help people. And then actually, it was a homeless person. He said to me, stories are the pages that make up this book we call life. And usually that would go right over my head, and I'd think, what is this guy going on about, right? But that was it. We all have a story. How do we use those stories to encourage others? And that was my light bulb moment that don't often come. It did on that day. And within 3 weeks, I'd started Tales to Inspire. I literally turned it around, interviewed a friend who had been homeless for 5 years, and basically put it onto a blog. Had no idea where it was going. And within one day, a young lady who was gonna take her own life. She read Danny's story, felt encouraged, and at the end of every tale that we released, we put helplines, and she went. And then ever since then, it's just grown into this platform really to share the stories and so much more.
That's beautiful. I mean, talk about the fuel to keep going when you hear the feedback like that and see that you can, I mean, even, we're one person. There's so much that we can have, the control of the space around us, but then you realize like you really can make a difference even as a single person. And to have those stories just ignite, all the other stories that have come about. I mean, I guess, what is the common thread in a lot of the stories that you're telling? Is there one, or are they pretty different?
So I truly believe that everyone has a tale to inspire. Sometimes we just have to dig a little for it to come to the surface. So every single one of us have been through something, a death in the family, or a friend who's passed away, financial hardships, mental health struggles, and just those dark days when you don't want to wake up sometimes. We all have been through something, but we're still here. We all have something that we can inspire someone else with. So our stories that we share are people who transform their life. It can be a small transformation. I mean, your molehill could be my mountain. It could be super simple for Angelique Bolden to get through, right? But for me, that could be my impossible. So I'm not here to compare who it's easy for or hard for, but let's get those stories out there to inspire people. So the one thing that's really, really interesting is companies and organizations reach out to us saying, you're so inclusive. I'm just sharing the stories of everyone, and that's true inclusion, is actually letting everyone be at the table.
Absolutely. Especially because like the amount that you can learn from everyone at the table when you give them a voice. And, I think so much that we have that term doom scrolling now, where it's just like bad news after bad news. And you think like we're consuming all of this, but what if we just consume the good stories? What if there are more stories to be told where it's like, hey, you're not alone in this situation. Bad shit happens to people all the time. Or, how can you use that as that fuel in our own lives? And I guess, what are some of the, what are some of those more inspirational moments that you've had in this process? Like, what are your top 3, I guess?
My top 3 in this process, I guess, you know what? The top 3 was when I got to prove to my dad that this worked. And so, interestingly,
it's a sustainable business model,
right? The first 9 months of Tales to Inspire, I quit my job and started Tales to Inspire, right? In January of 2020, everyone went, what are you doing? You're sharing people's stories. You can't even make money from that. Yeah. And I was like, I don't know. I don't care. I just know that this is the right thing. It feels right. 9 months later, we went from the red to actually, here's some money coming in, right? And everything, every month since, it's been, and for me, that was the proof that I needed to show the people who doubted me that it's working. That was their proof. It wasn't me. I knew it was right because it was impacting lives. For them, it got them off my back. And it made me realize, actually, now I can fly.
Let me be. Yeah,
let me be. And I can really spread my wings now. And that's the proof I needed. So first of all, independence to really go with this, The second one was, the second proudest moment is building a team. And it was lonely. Being an entrepreneur, having a business, and especially one that's based on such social values, you've got to get people involved. At first, I thought Tales to Inspire could all be Tales to Inspire, and Krish could go and sit in the background. Then I realized Krish had to come to the forefront before he can come to the background. Yes. And that was where now I'm starting to go into the background, but I had to get people involved and really connected to the vision of what we're doing.
Right.
So building a team now, I was by myself for long periods of time. Now we've got 10 people in the team. So building a team has been huge. It's been so much fun. And the freedom. the freedom it gives me to be able to do this. Tales to Inspire has grown because of the way we look at gaps. Like we don't go into a place and see a problem. We see, all right, there's a gap there. How can we support people in that gap? Now, it's individual solutions that are actually systematic problems. So if we can go in from that, like you look into a big corporate place, or you go into the government, wherever you look, there's big problems. Those big problems are because of individual issues. What I see and what Tales to Inspire started to look at the scenarios of places is we're seeing that these problems are individual problems. And if you connect them, boom, you can change systems. It's the same thing in society. Why are so many people suffering? Because the systems are broken. What do we need to do? Support the individuals. You support the individuals, they will become part of the, well, they already are part of the system, but they'll become part of the change for the system to change.
Right.
We can't change the macrocosm to affect the microcosm. We can only change the microcosm, which is our lives, to impact the macrocosm.
So what does your work in that capacity look like? How are you all working to identify these gaps and work with organizations through Tales to Inspire?
So we're getting in, we're being there on the ground, and all of our people. So over 125 ambassadors, first and foremost. So someone comes in, they share their story. We get to know where they're like, what their life is, what their experience is around the world and in their individual lives. Then we go into schools. Then we get asked to go work in these corporate spaces. Then we get asked to do things within the government. So our team and our ambassadors are going there on behalf of us and themselves into these areas. We're seeing the gaps. So then we're coming back, we're creating solutions, and then we're saying, right, who's doing something that already does something? So who are the collaborators? Who are the people we can connect with? Right. And people often say, and on business, and when we look at competitors as negative. I'm here to help change systems and make a difference. The more competitors I have in this industry that I'm in, the better. Like we're here. That social value is huge. Bring them all in. Get us all involved because, you know,
community over competition.
Massive community over competition, right? I mean, business, maximize profit. No, maximize impact and profit will come.
Maximize impact and profit will come. I love that. And that, I mean, going back to the topic that we're chatting about today, you know, it's definitely something where my own core belief is like, if more organizations, I mean, you look at the Amazons, the Apples, like these massive global corporations and the amount of power that they have, if their social impact was so much of a priority, I believe that they're the ones who are going to be changing the world, sometimes even more than governments. So what are, you know, I guess the question for me there is, you know, how do we get more organizations to adapt this mindset? How do we get more organizations to say, I'm going to start a business with this as the you know, the center line of things? I mean, I think of Patagonia. They're like, well, we're an environmental organization, you know, working to combat environmental issues and climate change by selling clothes. So what are some of these other, you know, ways that we can encourage companies to adopt a similar mindset?
So I think it's about hope. Can we inspire hope in individuals and in systems? So the systems that are already built. So let's look at that. The big apples. You talk about Apple, right? Or you talk about Amazon, right? Yeah. Those are huge, right? There was an opportunity for them to get to where they are now. And they were super creative. These aren't good and bad. We live in a duality. Good company, bad company, right? I can be great to you today, but I could, I don't know, run over a cat in my car tomorrow and you might think, how dare did I ever believe in Krish Patel, right? Or I could do a bad thing. It doesn't mean that I'm a bad person, right? So first and foremost, how do we change that? Now, on my bad days, I feel so overwhelmed with this question you just asked. Because the question you asked, I think, man, I'm trying to make individual change, but the systems we're in are so broken. Then my next question to me is, what's the point? Yeah. But when I now do this, now I know there's so much space and I'm a millennial. I want it and I want it yesterday. Just got to be patient. Just got to be, I want Amazon Prime +2, you know, that's the kind of thing that I want. But actually, just got to be patient and know that what are your methodologies of success? So for me, it's not to say, let's get rid of Apple, let's get rid of Amazon. How do we help support those to realize? And who are they built from? They're built from individuals. Yes. They're built from individuals. Like the individual, Jeff Bezos, if you want to look at Jeff Bezos, whoever, he cares for someone, right? He has the potential to care for someone. How do we speak to that potential and then start to go? Now, at the moment, I often get asked to go into corporates and places, and it's a tick box exercise.
Yeah.
I'm a brown face to go into a place and they're ticking a box. If that's the case right now, maybe that's the stage it's in of ticking boxes. But when I get in there, my responsibility is to awaken their eyes, open their eyes to the reality of life. Like, this is where you're at, and this is how you're impacting it. Can you change? And then when we do that, boom, instead of me just going in and writing it, doing a script, you know, that's me getting in there and causing them to really wake up. And that's where us as individuals can really make an impact in these systems. But it's not a quick fix because they're broken systems, you know, it's not a quick fix.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, you know, I like how you said, like, how do we speak to that potential? And with every single individual that serves at these organizations, like you said, they all care about something. How do we come together and make a greater impact for that organization to drive that change then? I guess, do you have experience, or can you speak to how do you help companies arrive at what is their social impact model? Because I mean, you think at the end of the day, like businesses need to make money. They need to be able to provide for their employees, build these cultures, you know, encourage employees. So there's always the bottom line, but how can that bottom line, I mean, how do you best mold those social impact initiatives to the organizations? How do you help them find that?
You've just got to sit down with them, simple, the old-fashioned way, and find out what they want. What are their aims? So what industry they're in? The clothes, is it Patagonia? Are they in that side of things? Are they outdoors? Or is it the finance? Because banks and that side of things got a lot of stick, right? So how do we sit down with them, find out their goals, what are their aims, and then we start to unfold and show them what they want or what they can have. Many times they don't even realize what they can do. You think because they're a huge billion-dollar company that they know everything. You wouldn't believe the amount of companies that I've been into who've got systems, and you're like, what, you're still giving me a check to pay with? Like, this, so it's going to take 6 weeks for it to get to me right now? Like, mind-blowing, right? They're so working in the old ages, you know, it's so far behind. So just because they're big, massive companies doesn't mean that they know everything, you know? So it's really to get into those places, see where they're at right there. Now, there's stages. There's different stages. There's some organizations and some companies that are willing to change. There's some that want you in for that tick box. But there's also some who think the change can come from within, which is wonderful. I truly believe it can. However, if the culture doesn't allow it, that's very difficult. So I'll give an example. We worked with a company, and that company said it was about diversity and inclusion. They'd had a really bad track record. And they said, you know what, we're going to employ 2 new employees, some diversity and inclusion officers, and we're really going to change it up. We've done some research inside our own company, and we've employed 2 people inside our company. The problem is, it's been going on for over 150 years in your company. You are then getting those people to come into your company on that role. They may do the best job in the world, but they're trying to basically change something that's broken. They're putting their own jobs at risk.
Yeah.
To basically call you out.
Systemic issues.
You know, massive issues. So they're either going to, the individuals who've got the new jobs are either going to give up because they hate the fact that they're always fighting against a system that they've got. They're going to hate their job, or they're going to basically say, right, you guys do what you want. Do what you want because I can't do anything about it. So they're going to leave and give up. They're going to stay in and give up, but it's not going to do. The power of an external company or individual or people with social value is we can call them out. Call them out. This is your problem. These are the people we work with. This is what you need to change. Fire us. You're paying us anyway. Get rid of us. That's fine. We're here to show you how to change. If you're not willing to do it, that's on you.
Don't waste our time either.
Boom. Don't waste our time. But not everyone's willing to get to that space, or not every company.
I had a former director that said something to me that I really valued in the aspect of change. And he's like, you know, everybody agrees that things need to change. Everybody knows they want to make a change. They're open to change. They're not open to being changed. And that is such like that push and pull, because I look at organizations where like, yeah, we need to change, we need to do these things. And they kind of like you said, they check these boxes, they get the, these employees in place. But if your broader culture is not actually absorbing what they're being told, then, well, nothing's really going to change. It's going to remain the same. And if not, maybe worse sometimes too, because I think checking the box is, especially with the younger generations today, with brands that, just try and tick the box and just, play on these social concepts for advertising dollars. Like, we can sniff it out. We can smell a phony. We can tell when it's, being washed away as, some sort of diversity or inclusion tactic without having like that true developmental meaning from a cultural sense. So I guess when you're looking at, you've got those different stages that these companies are in. So the ones that are ready, the ones that are in the middle. So do you have different approaches for each of them? How do we get some of those that are like, hey, 107 years, like we still can't figure out how to make a change here? Like, what are some different tactics that you take with them on that individualized level?
This is really good. Now, this is where talking about the gaps and finding the gaps has really come in handy. And as a culture from Tales to Inspire with our team, it's really important. So we've seen that this is an issue. People don't want to get involved. There's stages to it. So we've created a few solutions. So one of them is get us in and we will share the stories of your individuals within your companies. So you may know what people do in your company, but do you truly know who they are? So we go in and we do storytelling workshops, but we find out who those people are and we put it into a book, right? And we then provide that book for every single one of those employees. They start to find out that Marvin had cancer twice, or that Lucy, has run a marathon before, and all these things. Man, Lucy, I worked with you for 15 years. How did I not know that? You start to break down barriers to see what they've been through. And you start to realize that actually, wow, that culture can change. And you start to bring down the wall. That's one solution. But the other side of it is that we realize that time is a big issue and money is a big issue, right? So no one wants to spend any money and, oh, I'm so busy with work. I don't have any time. My mental health struggling. I can't do it. If I do a mental health workshop, that mental health workshop that's taking half a day is actually putting more pressure on that employee, because they're going to have to find another half a day to do the work that they need to do, right? So what we've done is we created the Leaders to Inspire portal. Now it's a portal based off 4 pillars: performance, well-being, inclusion, and sustainability. And that portal, the employer pays a minimal amount per year, and their employees get access to this portal wherever they want, okay, whenever they want. And they get those 4 pillars and they can adapt it however they want. So they can see the content they need. The beautiful thing that Tales to Inspire has is 125 ambassadors. Those people can share their stories. They can do workshops on there, and people can access what they want in their own time.
I like that. On demand.
On demand, whenever they want. Okay. And that'll take them through the stages. We'll see the data from that to see what people are accessing. We'll let their employers know this is what people are accessing. This is what they're enjoying. They're taking what they need from it. And then we can provide solutions there from then onwards, which is, it's unique. We've seen a gap and we think, well, we know it works.
I think about, because this topic kind of comes up too in the well-being space within organizations, well-being initiatives and, employees. It's like, oh, I got, a packed 8-hour day and you want me to take another hour to go focus on yoga or talk to a health coach. And so I think there's a big element of that. It's personal responsibility. They've got to bring themselves to that table. They've got to know that, hey, if I show up, I can be part of this change. But I think it's also getting people to show up. So I like to hear that you also are looking at the data and reporting that back to the employer to let them know, like, hey, these people are taking initiative. They want to know how to solve some of these problems at a grander scale. And, when you talk about sharing stories of your employees and the people around you, what amazes me still is we somehow are, and I think the pandemic did change a good bit of this. But what you're saying too is like showing up as humans, not just here's my employee number, here's what I do, here's, you're going beyond this job title and helping people break down like this. These are different humans that you're speaking to, humans with, these stories and like the background. And I love the vulnerability aspect of that too, because that's where you create empathy. That's where you create empathy with one another. And, in leadership positions, I think we put a lot of weight on our leaders. I mean, as we should, but we also have to look at them as humans too. And understand, like, hey, like, how do we have more of a just open, vulnerable conversations with the people in our teams? And I was lucky to be a part of that team, a team like that recently, and it makes teams so much closer when you know that this is, you're looking at them more than your marketing manager, your CTO, and you're like, this is a human being and we're going to solve some problems together. So I went on a tangent there, but I love to hear that, because it's just, we still sometimes miss that element of bringing in the human aspect into business. And I like to think that we're going to continue down the path where we prioritize that more, but where we end up too is we want to be able to measure things. Companies want to be able to say, all right, well, what is the impact that these programs are having? And this is my next question for you is, what are maybe some takeaways that you've seen through these programs with companies? Can you tie it to sales dollars? Can you tie it to cultural, scores? What are some of the, I guess, the measurables that some of these companies look for?
So in terms of some of the companies, you can talk about sales dollars. It's hard to link kindness directly to sales.
Yeah.
And that's the tough thing, right? And I think this is where measurements are really, really important, because everything that we base measurements off often is on sales. It's on profit, right? We have to strategically change that to impact, maximize impact. So happiness, what's your happiness scale? Your satisfaction, how much time off does that person get? The study that was recently done in Japan, 4-day weeks. All those companies that have worked on those 4-day weeks, guess what? They've carried on with the 4-day weeks because they've realized their profit is more than it was with a 5-day week.
What is it, like, right? 18 of the 56 trial companies are like, yeah, we're doing this from now on. This is our thing. Yeah.
They're absolutely buzzing about it. And it's huge. And it's happening here. And it's happening like literally here. So in terms of the actual measurements, that is one of the hardest things. Now, I'm going to be absolutely honest. That has been one of the hardest things for me to fit myself into as a box, because the way that everyone measures things is so wrong, because we're measuring everything off impact of money. How do you measure an intangible thing? How do you measure culture? How do you measure feeling welcomed? How do you measure feeling empowered? How do you measure feeling empathetic? How do you measure these things? The only way you do it is by growth of your organization, and growth of your organization and happiness. So can those people really thrive? And the way that we found that is through feedback. Simple testimonials and feedback. Boom. Individuals, what do? We share people's stories. So we capture their stories, case studies. That's what we do. We capture those people's stories, but not the one-offs. Okay. Don't capture the one-off story of, oh yeah, this is a good student. We'll go to this one and we'll get their story.
Right.
Do it across the board. Do it across the board and get people to do it. And usually bring in an external person to do it who doesn't judge them and say, oh, well, and make it anonymous if you want to, however you want. Capture their stories and see what the theme is across that. That's how you do it. It cannot be a number. It cannot go into a graph. It has to be real life people, real life stories. Boom. And you'll see the case studies from that. Because once again, you said it then, these are people. These are humans, right? We often think that we have to leave our personality at the door when we go to work. What does that mean? You become a robot. You're literally a robot with blood. Simple. We're not robots with blood. We're not sheep. We're not just here to follow. One of the best things about your employees in your workplace is the fact that they're unique. Right. Please use their uniqueness. It'll help your company thrive. I promise you. Just let them have that, don't cut their wings, let their wings spread. So yeah, that's probably the biggest thing that I would say is it's the actual measurement of how you do it from an individual point of view within your company and how your company look. You have to look internally and really capture the stories of the individuals.
Yeah. But I'm sure, like, over time, you also see its impact when it comes to recruiting and retention. And I even would go as far as looking at how quickly you can get projects or large scale ideas across and, out the pipeline. Because when people work together, they're open to collaborating, they're open to other people's feedback, they're open to, hearing new ideas. Whereas if you're a number and you're siloed in this viewpoint, then I feel like a lot of that can be hard. I want to do like a whole episode just on how do we encourage more using everyone's uniqueness in an organization. Because there's some people where, they don't speak up in meetings, but those are always the one where I want to be like, I want to hear their point of view. I want to hear what they have to say. And sometimes they're the folks who are like, it's just not their route, and that's fine, but they're the ones with the most to offer. And it's incredible. Now I'm like thinking it was like another episode that we can go into is let's do one on, how to ignite your individual employees and, really get them talking. And I think the other thing that comes up in mind for that is we're also finally having more of the conversations about neurodivergency in culture and, really understanding how we can work with one another, whether it's literally how we learn and how we work or, how we are as individual humans. So I think that's incredible. And I know it's a hard question to ask because it's always like in business, we want to measure things. We want to be able to have the proof point. We want to be able to say, here's the ROI. But sometimes you just have to believe in the very least in the first beginnings of creating a program like this and in igniting a program like this. I know we're coming up on 30 minutes here, but I feel like we'll have more of these conversations too. I want to make sure that everyone knows where to find you. So where can I send some of our viewers to learn more about your work at Tales to Inspire?
So our website is www.talestoinspire.com. Social media, Tales to Inspire, and that's 2TO, not the number 2. So Tales to Inspire. And our podcast, if you like listening to stories, check out Tales to Inspire on Apple, Spotify, and everywhere you can listen to a podcast. So that's where we're at in terms of where Tales to Inspire can be found.
I love it. Well, thank you again for joining. I know we're across the pond, at least, from one another. So it's awesome to be able to connect and look forward to having more of these conversations. Again, for everyone listening, I will have the links in the description, and I hope you reach out to Krish and learn more about all of the exciting work he has going on. So thank you again for joining us.